Chapter 231. A virtual screen and a holographic touch keyboard. When these popped up from the belt, everyone's eyes widened. The older ones had only seen this kind of thing in movies and TV shows before the apocalypse. The younger ones, who were born after the apocalypse, had never seen this kind of thing. Even before the apocalypse, there had never been such advanced technology on Earth. Where on earth did Mr. Mo get it? Mo sure didn't explain. He said to the little monk, "Try it." The little monk was surprised. His right hand swiped across the virtual screen. Suddenly, the virtual keyboard lit up. He was unlocking the keyboard. The next moment, his hands began to type on the keyboard. He typed very slowly. After all, it was his first time touching a computer keyboard. But the position of his fingers was not wrong at all. After a few minutes of simple testing, his typing speed became faster. As he typed, a picture of a Buddha appeared on the virtual screen. It was just a very simple, rough picture of a Buddha. Only the outline of the Buddha could be seen. On the left side of the Buddha, there were 4 words, Amitabha. On the right side of the Buddha, there were also 4 words, good. As the Buddha's mouth opened and closed, these 8 words kept appearing on the screen. Finally, countless words appeared. These words then converged to form another Buddha. Black lines appeared on the old monk's forehead. This disciple of his had never been normal. He didn't look like a monk at all. The others were surprised. This little monk had only learned how to program for 3 days? Nonsense, right? Mo Shi's eyes lit up. Learning how to program in 3 days did sound ridiculous. But it didn't rule out that some geniuses could always do some incredible things. Thinking of this, Mo Shi moved his mind again. He took out the cheetah mech from his backpack. This cheetah mech was 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. Its whole body was cast with black metal. Its whole body was black. Just by standing there, it would give off a breathtaking aura. When everyone saw the sudden appearance of the mech, they all felt a chill in their hearts. The timid ones directly took 2 steps back. Even Guo Jitao couldn't help but feel nervous. Mo Shi said, "There's no need to make the programming so complicated for now. As long as you can use the keyboard to control this mecha, it'll be fine. The mech manual is in the system. Look for it yourself." Everyone was a little surprised when they heard this. Mecha? This was not Earth's technology. How many more treasures did Mr. Mo have that he had yet to take out? When the little monk heard Mo Shi's words, he immediately jumped in front of the cheetah mech. His eyes sparkled, and his face was filled with excitement. He kept stroking the body. He cried out in surprise. Amitabha, what a wonderful thing. Mecha? Holy sh*t, Brother Mo, where did you get it? It's actually a real mecha. F***ck, Big Brother Mo, are you really letting me control it? Master, can I say that I'm the F***ck? Don't be angry, it's just an exclamation. The little monk liked to play video games since he was a child, to the point that he was obsessed with them. Naturally, he was also obsessed with the mecha in the game console. Now that he had seen a real mecha, how could he not feel excited? The old monk sighed helplessly. Sigh, this old monk is not good at teaching. I've embarrassed myself in front of everyone. While the little monk was pleasantly surprised, he spent more than 2 minutes to find the mech manual in the system. Soon, the mech was activated. The eyes of the cheetah mech suddenly lit up with a blood-red light. The eyes of the jet-black cheetah suddenly lit up with a blood-red light. It looked even more terrifying. Mo Shi reminded him. Don't activate the weapon system first. The little monk naturally understood Mo Shi's meaning. He immediately said, I understand, Big Brother Mo. Then, his fingers tapped on the keyboard a few times, and the cheetah mech slowly moved. The little monk was so excited that he kept crying out. Holy sh*t, this is so wonderful. This feels so good. This is so much better than operating a mech in the game console. Master, I'm so happy. The old monk's shiny head was full of black lines. Even someone as calm as him could not help but scold. Divine reflection. The little monk acted as if he did not hear him at all. He continued to operate the mech while shouting. Everyone was shocked that Mr. Mo actually had such a mech, but they were also shocked by the little monk's genius. He had only self-taught for 3 days and he had already reached such a level. Wouldn't those who had studied for decades cry in the toilet? In fact, it was not their fault. Although the computer knowledge of the Flaming Land was similar to that of Earth in many ways. But there was a large part of it that was completely opposite to that of Earth. The more computer knowledge one had on Earth, the more difficult it was for them to accept the knowledge of the Flaming Land. This was because the knowledge of the Flaming Land had completely overturned their previous understanding. For people like the little monk, who had never studied computer science on Earth, it was easier for them to start from scratch. Mo sure said to Guojutao next to him, arrange for him to practice outside the city wall for the next few days. Guojutao nodded. Yes, Mr. Mo. After Mo sure finished explaining the matters here, the next step was to focus on improving his strength. Although Hunting Island No. 1 had been destroyed, this could only stop the people of the Flaming Land from coming for a period of time. There was only one way to really make them not dare to come to Earth again: strengthen himself. Therefore, Mo sure had to make himself as strong as possible before they came. Mo sure controlled the sea dragon avatar. After 5 hours of wandering, they had already arrived at the Bermuda area. The Bermuda Triangle was an equilateral triangle located in the Atlantic Ocean. Each side of this triangle was nearly 2,000 kilometers long. In this huge triangle area, there were often mysterious disappearances of planes and ships. It was said that the first person in human history to experience the danger of the Bermuda Triangle was the navigator Columbus. He once led a fleet of ships through the Bermuda Triangle and experienced monstrous waves that he had never seen before in his life. Their ship seemed to be sailing between canyons. All the compasses on the ship malfunctioned, and all the crew members were dizzy. Columbus hurriedly ordered them to return. But because the compasses failed, they couldn't tell the direction at all. Fortunately, their ship finally reached the shore safely. But at this time, they were too far away from their scheduled landing site. Regarding this, Mo sure had some understanding in his previous life. And the scientists had already given an explanation. The reason why planes and ships often crashed here was because there was an abnormal tape here. Therefore, when planes and ships passed by here, their electronic equipment would malfunction and eventually disappear. However, people still paled at the mention of the Devil's Triangle. Chapter 232. Mo sure came to the Bermuda Sea. He spread out his dragon's will and took in the sea within a 100-kilometer radius. Within his detection range, there didn't seem to be any difference. However, this was only the edge of the Bermuda Sea. He swam toward the center as he searched. According to Mo sure's detection, there were obvious fish and shrimp zones in the Bermuda Sea. Some areas had fish and shrimp, while some areas didn't have any fish or shrimp. Mo sure thought that this must have something to do with the magnetic tape. After swimming for about 600 kilometers, Mo sure finally found something. He saw a flat-topped pyramid in the dark bottom of the sea. The pyramid was about 2,000 meters from the sea surface. The pyramid was about 100 meters tall and had a flat top. Each bottom of the pyramid was about 400 meters long. An underwater pyramid? Mo sure was very surprised. He immediately swam toward the pyramid. He came near the pyramid. He used his dragon's will to search carefully several times. He saw that the underwater pyramid was also made of huge stones. Each of the huge stones was the size of a house. The entire pyramid looked magnificent and did not lose to the Egyptian pyramids at all. Moreover, this underwater pyramid was even more complete. Although there were traces of long-term seawater erosion on each stone, at least the entire structure was complete. Mo sure swam around the pyramid a few times and didn't find anything strange. There was no entrance either. It seemed that this was just a simple pile of stones. However, when Mo sure expanded his dragon's will to a 100-kilometer radius, he found that there were 3 other pyramids within this range. The shape, size, and material of each pyramid were almost exactly the same as the pyramid in front of him. Mosher expanded his search range again. In the end, he found that there were as many as 100 similar pyramids within 1,000 square kilometers. This was a huge group of pyramids. Every pyramid was equally majestic and huge. Even Mosher, who had seen a lot, couldn't help but be shocked. If this discovery was made public in the civilized era of his previous life, it would definitely shock the whole world. Mosher spent half a day carefully exploring this group of pyramids. He finally found that the pyramid in the center of this area was completely different from the other pyramids. The Iwu pyramid in the center was more than 800 meters tall. It was almost twice as tall as the other pyramids. The most special thing was that the material of the pyramid in the center was not ordinary stone. Instead, it was some kind of translucent stone that looked like glass. Mosher swam around the pyramid several times. He used his draconic will to investigate carefully. He found that the layout of the pyramid was indeed like an ancient tomb. The entrance to the tomb was in the center of the lowest level of the pyramid. From the outside, there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, when Mosher used his draconic will to investigate, he was able to detect that there was a mechanism on the boulder. The mechanism was very complicated. If an ordinary person tried to force their way in, they would probably be instantly turned into meat paste by the mechanism inside. However, the sea dragon clone was a terrifying existence that had reached the 10th level of a wild beast. With the current conditions on Earth, there was almost nothing that could break through its body's defenses. Therefore, Mosher didn't care about anything else. His 10-meter-long tail suddenly swept out. Bang! With a loud bang, the boulder was smashed into pieces. A 50-meter-long square passageway appeared on the pyramid. Mosher was inwardly overjoyed. Fortunately, the passageway was 50 meters long. If it was any smaller, the sea dragon clone wouldn't be able to enter at all. His draconic will probed along the passageway first. He already knew the various mechanisms inside like the back of his hand. However, after fully understanding these mechanisms, Mosher didn't care about them anymore. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam forward. Ding, 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 iron arrows kept shooting out from the cracks in the walls on both sides. However, when these iron arrows hit the sea dragon clone, they kept making tinkling sounds. The scales on the surface of the sea dragon clone weren't afraid of these iron arrows at all. Mosher didn't care at all and continued to swim forward. After swimming 50 meters, the stone walls on both sides began to move and squeeze toward the middle. Mosher sneered in his heart. The giant tail swung violently. Bang, bang, with 2 consecutive sounds, the stone walls on both sides were smashed into pieces. Even the entire pyramid seemed to shake twice. In fact, with the current strength of the sea dragon clone, as long as Mosher was willing, he could smash the entire pyramid into pieces at any time. However, in order not to destroy the overall structure of the pyramid, he swam in through the passageway. Next, Mosher destroyed 5 more mechanisms in a row. Only then did he reach the center of the pyramid. Here, there was another passageway that diagonally led downwards. The passageway looked pitch black. However, Mosher could detect that at the end of the pitch-black passageway was a vast world. Without any melancholy, he continued along the passageway. During this time, he broke through 3 more mechanisms in a row. Only then did he reach the end of the pitch-black passageway. When he arrived here, he suddenly felt enlightened. He saw that this was a huge valley. Corals grew everywhere in the valley. And almost all the corals were faintly fluorescent. They were red, green, yellow, and purple. They looked like neon lights at night in the city. However, they were far from being as tacky as neon lights. The light on these coral bushes was softer. Mosher was secretly surprised. Could this be the legendary undersea garden? In his previous life, he had once read a report about the undersea garden on the internet. It was said that a large coral bush was found at the bottom of the sea, and it looked like an undersea garden. However, the undersea garden that Mo saw in front of him was even more gorgeous than in the report. He controlled the 20-meter-long sea dragon clone and used his dragon will to investigate the surroundings as he slowly swam forward. Soon, he discovered that this coral forest was more than 70 kilometers long. In this 70-kilometer-long coral forest, there were dozens of creatures. These creatures all had human heads and fish bodies. Their gills had evolved into fish gills. However, their bodies were not all like mermaids. Some had bodies like octopuses. Some were like seahorses. Some had bodies like huge whales. In short, all kinds of undersea animals had human heads. After Mo's blood dragon's eye, these animals had all reached level 10 super mutated. However, their species column did not show that they were beasts. Instead, it was a general term, mermaid. Mo shook his head inwardly. Alright, these mermaids had completely overturned his beautiful imagination of the word mermaid. At this moment, a few nearby mermaids with squid bodies had already discovered Mo. Chapter 233. After discovering Mo's sea dragon clone, the cuttlefish mermen immediately swam towards it. Each cuttlefish merman was more than 300 meters long. But on this 300-meter-long body, there was a normal human head. It looked extremely out of place. As they swam towards Mo's, they kept making gurgling sounds from their throats. With the help of the foreign language proficiency skill, Mo's could easily master any language on Earth. At this moment, he heard the meaning of these giant cuttlefish mermen. There's an intruder. Kill it. It looks like a strange fish without any intelligence. At this point, a cuttlefish merman opened his mouth. Puff, a ball of jet black liquid spurted out. It went straight towards Mo's sea dragon clone. When this mass of black liquid passed by the seaweed next to it, the seaweed continued to emit black bubbles and began to rot rapidly. It turned out that the liquid spurted out by the cuttlefish merman was extremely corrosive. However, this extremely corrosive was only relative to the creatures on Earth. For the sea dragon clone, it was not worth mentioning at all. How dare you show off your meager skills in front of an expert? Mo almost said, "Great mighty heavenly dragon," in his heart. Then, a mouthful of strong acid was spat out. Puff, a mass of dark green liquid spurted out. In just an instant, the fan-shaped area with a radius of 1 kilometer in front of him was shrouded in the strong acid breath. At this moment, not only was the seaweed in this area rapidly rotting. Even the rocks in the surroundings were bubbling and melting rapidly. At the same time, the seawater within this area was constantly boiling. As for the cuttlefish mermen, the skin on the surface of their bodies was quickly corroded, revealing the flesh and blood inside. Then, the flesh and blood were also corroded, revealing the bones inside. The mouths of their human heads kept letting out mournful screams. Hiss, hiss, but this scream only lasted for a few seconds before their heads were corroded until only residue was left. The commotion here quickly attracted the other mermen. The two hammerhead shark mermen hurriedly sent a signal to the other mermen. There's an intruder. There's an intruder. All merfolk, support them immediately. In less than a moment, more than 50 mermaids emerged from the corals of the entire valley. Some of them were only about 10 meters tall. Some of them were 400 to 500 meters tall. There was even an electric eel mermaid that was 1,000 meters long. On the 1,000-meter-long body, there was only a small human head. It looked extremely strange. On its head, there was a pair of cherry-like antennae. The two antennae flashed with blue light. Mo aimed at the 1,000-meter-long electric eelman. He swung his tail vigorously and swam towards the electric eelman at full speed. The electric eel made a few squeaking sounds from its mouth. Mo understood what he meant. You don't know the meaning of death. Soon, when the two of them were only 100 meters apart, the pair of antennae on the electric eel's forehead shone brightly with blue light. A bolt of lightning shot straight at the sea dragon clone. This lightning bolt had a diameter of more than 2 meters. Even a level 10 super mutant beast would be seriously injured if it was electrocuted, if not killed. However, the sea dragon clone was indeed level 10, but it was not a super mutant beast. It was a whole realm higher than a super mutant beast. It was a desolate beast. Buzz buzz, the electric current hit the sea dragon clone in an instant. Mo sure only felt a burst of numbness all over his body, as if he had just taken out a sauna. He felt comfortable all over. Comfortable. Mo sure said. When the electric eelman saw this, a look of horror flashed in his eyes. One had to know that electric eelmen were basically unstoppable in this sea area. Even the powerful killer whales and mermaids had to retreat in front of the electric eel mermaids. After all, as long as they shot out an electric current, even a killer whale would be paralyzed and unable to move. But now, his electric current did not have the slightest effect on this little strange fish. Thinking of this, the electric eelman's 1,000-meter-long body swam over. He directly surrounded the sea dragon clone. Then, from beginning to end, electric current flashed. And in the middle of the encirclement, a huge electric net was formed. In this electric net, electric currents more than 2 meters in diameter flowed rapidly like giant pythons. Buzz buzz buzz, buzz buzz buzz, these electric currents kept hitting the sea dragon clone. Mo sure was once again electrocuted until his whole body was numb. Comfortable. Mo sure said in his heart. This was the most comfortable feeling he had ever felt in his life. It was as if he had a full body massage. The electric eelman saw that this small strange fish not only did not feel the slightest pain under his electric current, but also twisted his body comfortably. This made him even more horrified. What kind of monster was this? In horror, he turned around and wanted to escape. Mo sure originally wanted to let him electrocute him a few more times, but he didn't expect him to want to escape. He shook his head helplessly. His body quickly grew in size amidst the crackling sounds. In the next moment, his body reached nearly 200 meters long. He opened his huge mouth and directly bit the electric eelman's tail. Crack, the tail was bitten off. The electric eelman opened his mouth and screamed in pain, constantly twisting his body. The area within a kilometer was suddenly stirred up into a turbid mess. But with Mo sure's strength, he easily suppressed this electric eelman. He pressed him under his body and then continued to devour him, bite by bite. More than half an hour later, the electric eelman was devoured by him. At this time, the other hundreds of mermaids around had already surrounded him. Mo sure moved his mind, and more than 50 tentacles instantly grew on the sea dragon clone's body. The suction cups on each tentacle had an extremely strong suction force. Those mermaids at the bottom of the sea were sucked into the suction cups one after another. Then, from the suction cups, a sanguisurincus stretched out and directly pierced into the suction cups. It absorbed the blood of these mermaids. These mermaids kept struggling. But no matter how they struggled, they could never escape the control of the suction cups. In just a few minutes, these hundreds of mermaids were all devoured by the sea dragon clone. In this way, Mo sure slaughtered more than 500 mermaids in just 1 hour. Nearly half of the mermaids in the entire valley were slaughtered. The remaining 500 or so mermaids, seeing how ferocious this strange fish was, hurriedly fled forward in horror. But how could their speed compare to the speed of the sea dragon clone? Mo sure controlled the sea dragon clone and chased forward while devouring these mermaids. A moment later, he chased to the end of the valley. There were traces of buildings there. The first thing that caught his eye were the 2 tall stone statues on both sides. Chapter 234. Each of the 2 huge stone statues was more than 500 meters tall. They were like 2 door gods. There were many small holes on the stone statues, which were obviously eroded by seawater over countless years. What surprised Mo sure was that these 2 stone statues were not mermaids. They were humans. After passing through the gate between these 2 door gods, there was a seemingly very wide area. There were large areas of buildings here. Houses, bridges, stone gates, stone roads. There was also a stone pyramid that was 1,000 meters tall. Under the reflection of the surrounding coral bushes, this huge city looked full of vicissitudes after the baptism of time. Mo Shi's heart moved slightly. Legend had it that in history, there was a civilization called the Atlantis civilization. Later, it suddenly disappeared overnight. Some people said that the entire Atlantis sank into the sea. Could it be that this was it? Those mermaids fled into the city and quickly hid in these buildings. Of course, the mermaids were very large in size. Even if they wanted to hide, they could only hide in those tall buildings. There were also some mermaids who fled to the pyramid in the center of the city. They crawled on the ground in front of the pyramid. They kept praying loudly. "Great King of Atlantis, please save your people. Great King of Atlantis, there are outsiders who are slaughtering your people. Please save your people." At this time, the huge pyramid, with a rumbling sound, cracked to both sides. From it, a mermaid swam out. This mermaid was completely different from the other mermaids who were ugly, strange, and ferocious. This was a female mermaid. The upper body was completely a woman's body. The lower body was a fish tail. This was completely consistent with the legendary image of a mermaid. This woman, whether it was her figure or appearance, was absolutely one in a million. Her pair of eyes, as blue as the sea, seemed to be able to hook people's souls. She looked at the group of mermaids below and said, "My people, as your king, I, the Queen of Atlantis, will not let any creature hurt you." All the hundreds of mermen below lowered their heads even more. "Thank you, Queen." The Queen of Atlantis shifted her gaze away from her people. He turned to Mo Shi's sea dragon clone. When her gaze fell on the sea dragon clone, a cold murderous intent flashed in her azure eyes. He let out a roar. "Hiss! You dare to harm my Atlantean people? Die!" As she spoke, cracking sounds could be heard from her body. Her body also began to expand rapidly. It grew longer and thicker. In the end, her body reached a length of 1,500 meters. Moreover, after she grew bigger, her head didn't stay the same like other fish. Instead, his head grew longer as well. Mo Shi was slightly surprised. During battle, their bodies would enlarge in size in order to increase their combat power to the limit. Normally, his body would shrink several times or even 100 times in order to reduce his energy consumption. This was a skill that could only be mastered by desolate beasts. He immediately used the blood dragon's eyes to look at the Queen of Atlantis. Species, Submermaid, Level 10 Ultra Mutated Wild Beast, Abilities, Extreme Charm, thousands of sharp teeth. It turned out that this wasn't a real mermaid. It was a subspecies of mermaid that only had a portion of human bloodline. At the same time, Mo Shi knew that she was only a level 10 ultra mutated beast. Although she had mastered a certain level of desolate beast abilities, due to the restrictions on Earth, she would never be able to reach the level of a desolate beast. Mo Shi had experienced the extreme charm skill once before. With the blood dragon's eyes, these were basically floating clouds in his eyes. As for what thousands of sharp teeth were, Mo Shi didn't know. However, no matter how powerful a level 10 ultra mutated beast skill was, it was nothing in front of a level 10 desolate beast. The mermaid's huge head opened its huge mouth. And the huge mouth opened wider and wider. In the end, not only did it crack to the back of her head, but it also cracked to her neck. Continuing down, her entire upper body cracked open. The crack was filled with 2 rows of uneven, yellowed teeth. There was still some raw meat hanging between the teeth. She looked ferocious and disgusting. Compared to her previous appearance, it was a complete contrast. This huge mouth directly swallowed Mo Shi's sea dragon clone. Mo Shi sneered in his heart. He controlled the sea dragon clone, stretched its body, and floated there. He allowed the mermaid to devour it. The mermaid's huge mouth directly bit the sea dragon clone's neck. The 2 rows of sharp intersecting teeth were each more than 2 meters long and looked like 2 rows of sharp swords. Crack, under this bite, the sea dragon clone didn't move at all. The mermaid was slightly shocked. What was going on? With her sharp teeth, even a rock could be easily crushed. She couldn't bite this strange fish's body. Mo Shi was controlling the sea dragon clone at this moment. Its two front claws, which were as thick as tree trunks, grabbed both sides of the mermaid's big mouth. Then, he tore it forcefully. Hiss, it actually tore open another 500 meters of the mermaid's big mouth. It tore her upper jaw, along with her entire head, off her body. Blood immediately gushed out. It spread out in the sea water. The mermaid didn't even have the chance to struggle before she was torn in half by Mo Shi. Instant kill. And he didn't use any skills. He killed the Queen of Atlantis in one fell swoop with brute force. All the mermaids present were horrified when they saw this. Their great Queen of Atlantis died just like that. And she was killed by this strange fish in one blow. How was this possible? The Queen of Atlantis had lived for hundreds of years and was the most powerful existence in the entire sea. How could she be killed in one blow? But now the reality was in front of them, and they had to believe it. At this moment, they looked at Mo Shi with fear and despair in their eyes. In their eyes, the Queen of Atlantis was a godlike existence. And now, even their god had been killed by this strange fish in one blow. What else could they do? Run? Resist? What a joke. Seeing that these mermaids had all lost the will to resist, Mo Shi immediately unleashed thousands of tentacles and swallowed them all. At this point, Mo Shi had already devoured more than 1,000 mermaids. At the same time, in his mind, he said, "System, sign in." The system's voice quickly sounded, and it was still so pleasant to the ear. Sign in successful. Sign in location, Atlantis, sign in reward, Dragon Palace upgrade. After Mo Shi checked this reward, he was overjoyed. After the upgrade of the Dragon Palace, the benefits it brought were far beyond Mo Shi's imagination. Chapter 235. After Mo Shi checked in at Atlantis, his reward was the upgrade of the Dragon Palace. He checked the reward in his mind. Virtual Dragon Palace upgraded to Level 2. Level 2 Virtual Dragon Palace generates virtual arrow towers and virtual city walls. The virtual city wall could resist any attack below LV-10, including LV-10 hunters. The virtual arrow tower could cause damage to any creature below LV-10, including LV-10 hunters. The automatic attack range is 10 kilometers. Attack and defense are passive skills, automatically triggered when encountering the enemy's attack and defense. At the same time, Mo Shi saw a scene in his mind. Around the virtual dragon palace of base C1, it was like building a house in the game. Virtual bricks were quickly piled up. Virtual stones were quickly piled up as well. Just a few minutes later, a virtual city wall was built around the entire virtual dragon palace. This virtual city wall was 10 times taller than the physical city wall around the base. It reached a height of 100 meters. Arrow towers were quickly built on top of these virtual city walls. These arrow towers were more than 200 meters tall. The entire virtual city wall was like a ring-shaped mountain range. The arrow towers above were like mountain peaks. There were no less than 100 virtual arrow towers like this. They covered the entire base. Mo Shi looked at these and was overjoyed. After the upgrade of the virtual dragon palace, any creature below level 10 hunters could not cause damage to the virtual dragon palace. And if they dared to attack the virtual dragon palace rashly, the virtual dragon palace's counterattack would be absolutely awesome. As long as the enemy did not send any hunters, the rest of the hunters would die. This effect was too heaven-defying. Of course, others could not see such a heaven-defying virtual dragon palace. In their eyes, there were no tall city walls or arrow towers at all. Now that he had this level 2 virtual dragon palace, Missouri Shi could not help but have an idea in his mind. Previously, he thought that when he was strong enough, he would go to the Flaming Land to explore. They dared to treat Earth as a hunting ground, so he would let them know who the prey was. But it would take a long time to realize this idea. But now that he had this virtual dragon palace, he could go to the Flaming Land directly. He could use Hunting Island 1 as his base. He could use this to develop and strengthen his forces. And now on the entire Earth, there were fewer and fewer places where one could sign in. The Flame Beginning continent was undoubtedly a brand new check-in map. Thinking of this, Mo sure couldn't help but feel a little excited. However, with his cautious nature, it was naturally impossible for him to go now. At the very least, he had to find the dragon ruins at the bottom of the sea to see if he could raise his strength to the level of a hunter. Thinking of this, he shrunk his body and observed the surrounding terrain. After investigating, he found that the surrounding terrain was almost exactly the same as the terrain on the map he had obtained before. Except for the underwater city, the other mountains and ravines were almost copied from the map. The location of the dragon ruins was marked on the pyramid that the mermaid had just come out from. Mo sure was overjoyed, and immediately came to the top of the pyramid. Looking down from here, he saw a pitch-black cave entrance. The cave entrance was huge. The diameter was almost exactly the same as the bottom side of the pyramid. The existence of the pyramid seemed to be to block the entrance of the cave. Mo sure used his draconic psyche to investigate the cave. The cave was still empty, and there was nothing inside. After carefully probing the inside a few more times with his draconic psyche and confirming that there was no danger inside, Mo sure controlled the sea dragon avatar and swam into the cracked pyramid. Then he entered the cave from the bottom of the pyramid. This was an oval-shaped cave. The longest part of the cave was more than 5,000 meters long. The widest part was more than 2,000 meters. On the other side of the cave, there seemed to have been a huge exit in the past. But because of the changes in the Earth's crust, the cave entrance had completely collapsed. Mo sure looked around for a moment and sighed in his heart. "I finally found it," he said in his mind. "System, sign in." The system's voice immediately sounded frowny face. "Sign in successful. Sign in location, dragon ruins at the bottom of the sea. Sign in reward, 1, underwater roaming, 2, water dragon's breath, 3, a wisp of draconic psyche, 4, a drop of titan dragon blood." This should have been the lair of a water dragon in the past. This time, he directly received 4 rewards. Mo sure glanced at it and roughly knew what the 4th reward was for. However, he still suppressed the excitement in his heart and finished reading the first 2 skills. Underwater roaming was obviously a skill that could allow him to survive in the water. With this skill, Mo sure's main body could also survive in the water for a long time. Water dragon's breath could spit out energy water pillars. In terms of destructive power, it was far inferior to flame dragon's breath. But under certain circumstances, it was still very useful. The 3rd draconic psyche was needless to say. He had obtained a wisp of draconic psyche before, and now with this wisp of draconic psyche, his draconic psyche had reached the peak of level 3. As long as he obtained a little more draconic psyche, he would be able to reach level 4. This already made Mo sure happy. After reading these 3 rewards, Mo sure shifted his gaze to the 3rd reward. His heart was beating faster than usual. Titan dragon blood, after swallowing, it can help the host break through the limit and reach the hunter realm. And obtain the corresponding skills. F***ck, it finally appeared. Mo sure couldn't help but feel his heart beat faster. He had always been cautious and liked to plan before acting. At this time, he couldn't help but directly put the sea dragon clone into his personal reservoir. The next moment, his consciousness returned to his main body. At this time, it was late at night in the base. There was no one around. Everything was silent. Mo sure's draconic psyche probed again. After confirming that it was completely safe. With a thought in his mind, he took out the drop of Titan dragon blood. This drop of blood was contained in a bottle only the size of a finger. He opened the bottle cap. He saw that this drop of blood was a clear bright red. It rolled in the bottom of the bottle. It was like a drop of water rolling on a lotus leaf. Just by looking at this drop of blood, one could feel that it contained an extremely majestic energy. This majestic energy was much greater than the energy in the blood dragon wings on Mo Shi's back. In the past, it was the Titan Dragon bloodline modification liquid. But now, this drop was directly the Titan Dragon blood. One could imagine that the two were not on the same level at all. Mo Shi suppressed the excitement in his heart and poured this drop of blood-red liquid into his mouth. This drop of liquid melted as soon as it entered his mouth. It turned into an extremely large amount of energy and rushed to all of his meridians at an extremely fast speed. It followed all of his meridians and rushed to every cell in his body. Chapter 236. The energy contained in a small drop of liquid was unimaginably huge. At first, it flowed along his meridians. But soon, the small meridians could not contain the huge amount of energy. Thus, the huge amount of energy began to break through the barriers between the cells in his body. The huge amount of energy rampaged through Mo Shi's body like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It seemed to want to tear apart, break through, and destroy the cells in Mo Shi's body. The pain of his body being torn apart continued to come. Only now did Mo Shi realize how important the modification liquid was to his body. If not for the modification liquid, he would have exploded into a bloody mist when this huge amount of energy entered his body. At this time, although Mo Shi's body was in intense pain, he could still barely withstand the terrifying energy. But soon, his body had reached its limit. The violent energy seemed to be about to tear his body apart. At this moment, the dragon claws on his arms condensed. The Titan dragon breastplate on his body had also condensed. In this way, the pain in his arms and torso was alleviated a little. It was also at this moment that his legs began to slowly become thicker and longer. In the end, they actually became 3 times longer and 3 times thicker than before. Furthermore, tough and shiny black scales had also grown out of his legs. His feet were also 3 times larger than before. And accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, there was a continuous sound. His feet gradually turned into a pair of dragon claws. At this time, except for his head, his arms, legs, and torso had all turned into dragon form. Of course, overall, the dragon form, at this time was not the true dragon form. It was equivalent to a dragon's body in human form. In this form, Mo Shi's physical strength was extremely terrifying. Whether it was his attack or defense, they were all greatly enhanced. Gradually, the pain in Mo Shi's body slowly subsided. And in his mind, the image of the giant dragon appeared again. It was still the shadow of the giant dragon. But this time, the shadow was more solid than the previous few times. When the giant dragon looked at Mo Shi only felt a sense of horror in his heart, as if he was looking at an abyss demon. The dragon was several meters long. It streaked across the sky, blotting out the sun. And the world below the giant dragon was a continuous stretch of mountains. However, there was no longer any vegetation on the mountain. Scorched earth was everywhere. From time to time, they could see smoke and fire filling the air. In this smoke-filled mountain, there were corpses of other dragons everywhere. There were blue, purple, red, and black dragons of all colors. They could be as large as a few thousand meters or as small as a few dozen meters. It was clear that a war between dragons had just taken place here. Mo Shi still wanted to take a closer look, but the giant dragon in the sky had already retracted its wings and swooped down. Again. Mo Shi was speechless. Although he had already experienced such a situation several times. But every time he experienced it, it felt like his first time. After all, when it first appeared, it was just a blurry shadow. And now, it was becoming more and more realistic. Therefore, even someone as strong as Mo Shi could not help but tremble slightly. He wanted to escape, but he found that his legs were already frozen in place. In the end, he could only watch as the huge dragon opened its cave-like mouth and completely swallowed him. Only then did Mo Shi suddenly open his eyes. At this time, he was about 3 meters tall. He was like a giant. Fortunately, the roof of the corpse farm was about 3.5 meters high. Otherwise, his head would have hit the roof at this time. His whole body, except for his head, was covered with a layer of black scales. It looked very visually striking. Of course, this was not his real body. It was just his skill. He took a look at his attributes in his mind. Name, Mo Shi, Level 1 Scavenger, Level 3 Long Nian Shi, Evolution Path, Titan Dragon. Phew, Mo Shi let out a long breath. His eyes shone brightly. Because of excitement, his cheeks were a little red. Finally, he had become a scavenger. When he was a level 10 Great Hunter, he could already kill a level 5 scavenger. Now that he had become a level 1 scavenger, with his strength, killing a level 6 scavenger should not be a problem. At this time, he moved his mind and withdrew his skill. His whole body returned to the body of a human. Looking at his naked lower body, Mo Shi shook his head helplessly. If only he could borrow a pair of pants from Green Fatty. Now that he had evolved into a scavenger, according to the previous plan, Mo Shi should go to the Flaming Land. But when he signed in before, he obtained a strand of dragon will, which made Mo Shi's dragon will almost reach the peak of level 3. This made him temporarily put the plan to go to the Flaming Land on hold. Because before, the plague dragon had divided his dragon will into tens of thousands and attached to many people. Now he just had to find a way to find those people and devour the plague dragon's dragon will in their bodies. Then his dragon will would definitely be promoted to level 4. With level 4 dragon will, his combat strength would increase by a lot. At that time, it would be safer to go to the Flaming Land. With Mo Shi's current dragon will, as long as he was within 1,000 meters of people with dragon will, he would be able to sense the dragon will in their bodies. Early the next morning, Mo Shi was in the entire base, sensing the dragon will in these people's bodies. With his speed, he quickly circled around the base. In the end, he found more than 10 people with dragon will in their minds. Of course, compared to Mo Shi's dragon will, the dragon will in these people's bodies was very weak. Mo Shi came in front of a middle-aged woman. His dragon will could easily sense the plague dragon's dragon will in that person's body. The middle-aged woman looked at Mo Shi with a slight fear in her eyes. This was the reaction everyone had when facing Mo Shi. Mo Shi did not say much. He directly wrapped the woman with dragon will to prevent the plague dragon's dragon will from escaping. Then a part of dragon will entered the woman's body and directly invaded her brain. At this moment, the plague dragon's dragon will that had been deeply hidden in the woman's body finally knew what Mo Shi was going to do. He sneered. Lowly human, you want to devour my dragon will? How dare you show off your insignificant skill in front of an expert? As he spoke, his dragon will suddenly expanded and tried to devour Mo Shi's dragon will. Unfortunately, his dragon will had already gone through 10,000 years, so there was not much left. Later on, it split into tens of thousands of strands, so there was not much left. Moreover, Mo Shi's dragon will devour skill ignored the opponent's level. Therefore, Mo Shi easily devoured the plague dragon's dragon will. Chapter 237. After Mo Shi devoured this person, he could feel that the dragon will in his body seemed to have increased a little. Although it wasn't much, with the strength of his dragon will, he would be able to detect the slightest change. The middle-aged woman didn't know what Mo Shi had done. Mo Shi only said indifferently, "You can go now." The middle-aged woman immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Yes, Mr. Mo." She turned around and quickly left. Mo Shi looked at the second old man. The plague dragon's dragon will in the old man's body also detected that Mo Shi had devoured the plague dragon's dragon will in the woman's body. He couldn't help but be shocked. He quietly shrank into the old man's body and didn't dare to move at all. He tried to use this method to avoid Mo Shi's devouring. But it was obvious that he was too naive. Mo Shi's dragon will easily entered the old man's body and invaded his brain. Only now did the plague dragon's dragon will in the old man's body realize that there was no way to avoid it. It immediately launched a frenzied counterattack against Mo Shi's dragon will. However, in front of Mo Shi's dragon will, his dragon will was like starlight compared to the moon. In the end, in less than 5 seconds, Mo Shi devoured this dragon will. At this moment, the plague dragon's dragon will in the other people's bodies saw this and hurriedly swarmed forward, wanting to completely devour Mo Shi. But it was obvious that they were wrong. Even if they attacked together, it would be of no help. Dragon will devour regardless of level. It was no joke. When their dragon will invaded Mo Shi's body, they realized how stupid they were. It turned out that Mo Shi's dragon will had already set up an inescapable net in his body, waiting for them to come in. In the end, their dragon wills were all devoured by Mo Shi. In the next 3 days, Mo Shi went to all the bases in the world. In these bases, he found more than 300 people with dragon wills. Although the plague dragon's dragon will had split into thousands of strands and hidden in the human body. But after so many years, there were always people who died unexpectedly. There were also people who died because they couldn't withstand the plague dragon's dragon will. In the end, there were only 300 people left. Fortunately, when Mo Shi devoured the dragon intent of the 237th person, he felt the dragon intent in his mind grow at an extremely fast speed. This time, the breakthrough of dragon thoughts was not like the tearing pain that his body had to endure when he broke through to become a hunter. On the contrary, it was because he had been using dragon will for many years that he was extremely familiar with it. The entire breakthrough process seemed to have come naturally. Within a short 5 minutes, Long Nian had already broken through. At that instant, he could feel his dragon will spreading across the place. It actually covered an area with a radius of 200 kilometers. Breaking through one level would increase the distance by 50 kilometers. He was much stronger than the average Psyche master. One had to know that for an ordinary telekinesis master, every time they broke through a level, their telekinesis range would only increase by 10 kilometers. At the same time, Mo Shi learned a new skill through this breakthrough. The power of this skill could only be greater than the dragon will meteor. Moreover, the range of this skill far exceeded that of the dragon will meteor. Next, Mo Shi devoured the draconic will and the remaining 100 or so people. 3 days later, he returned to the base. Now, almost everything in the world had been settled. He did not intend to kill the remaining infected creatures. He would leave these infected creatures as sparring partners for the humans on Earth. That night, in the base, he opened his mouth and signed in. System, specify dragon blood, double the sign in. The system's voice sounded. Specify dragon blood, it can only be doubled each time. After the dragon palace was upgraded, the sign and reward can be quadrupled each time. Stacking the 2 rewards can get 8 times the reward. PFFF, Mo Shi almost spat out a mouthful of blood in his heart. He couldn't help but shout in his heart, wasn't it 10,000 times before? The system's voice replied. The energy contained in dragon blood is too huge. With the host's physical strength, swallowing 10,000 drops at a time is simply unbearable. Moreover, dragon blood is a treasure. Every drop of sign-in requires 10 million evolution points. With the host's current evolution points of more than 70 billion, he can only sign in 7,000 drops. F***CK. Mo Shi couldn't help but curse. This was too much of a scam. 1 drop of sign-in requires 10 million. It was really too much. However, in order to become stronger, not to mention 10 million, even if it was 100 billion, he had to grit his teeth and bear it. The system continued. This sign-in requires 20 million evolution points. Do you want to sign in? Yes. Mo Shi almost cried. Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, 2 drops of Titan dragon blood. Soon, Mo Shi's consciousness focused on the system backpack. The next moment, he saw 8 bottles of Titan dragon blood in the system backpack. This made Mo Shi's heart ache a lot less. Fortunately, the Dragon Palace was upgraded to level 2. The Dragon Palace's bonus for sign-in didn't consume evolution points. That was why he was able to get 6 drops of dragon blood in a single sign-in. Thinking of this, his heart felt a lot better. He opened the bottle cap and swallowed the 8 drops of Titan dragon blood. He felt that the energy in his body had increased a lot. With this energy, the power of the energy weapon unleashed during battle would definitely be extremely shocking. In the Flaming Origin continent, energy weapons were too strong. The bodies of the hunters couldn't bear it at all. Therefore, they often had to transform a part of their body into a strong metal material so that they could withstand the impact of energy. However, Mosher didn't need to transform at all. His body had been transformed by the modification liquid, and his strength had long surpassed that of ordinary hunters. In addition, now that he had dragon blood in his body, the strength of his body had greatly increased again. Therefore, his body could easily withstand the impact of energy. In the next few months, Mosher planned to continue sign in until his level reached level 2 before going to the Flaming Origin continent. However, his evolution points were a little tight just to sign in for a few months. Therefore, he once again condensed his virus clones. With his current strength, he could already condense 100 virus clones. Moreover, the strength of each virus clone had reached level 10 Great Hunter and level 1 Long Nian Shi. With such strength, he could do whatever he wanted on Earth. Mosher scattered these virus clones all over the world and let them kill infected creatures for him to obtain evolution points. One had to know that there were trillions of infected creatures on Earth. If these infected creatures were killed, the evolution points obtained would probably be in the tens of trillions. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about not having enough evolution points. Just like this, he signed in until 3 months. On this day, after Mosher swallowed another 8 drops of blood, his body changed again. Chapter 238. He stayed in the base for 3 months. Mosher stayed in the base for 3 months. During these 3 months, he was with Happy every day. The two of them were almost inseparable. Mosher's daily life was basically taken care of by Happy. Now, some of the vegetables planted in the base could be harvested. The people in the base prioritized the best vegetables and sent them to the zombie farm. Although Happy's culinary skills could not be compared to the chefs before the apocalypse, some of the home-cooked dishes had a different taste. Until now, Happy still thought that she did not know how to do anything other than work in the zombie farm. Other people were afraid of the power of the oracle, so no one dared to mention it in front of Happy. Besides going out with Mosher, Happy did not leave the zombie farm much. Therefore, she did not know that she was an existence that even Mosher could not stop when she went crazy. At the same time, during these 3 months, the small monk became very familiar with the control of the mecha. Now, everyone knew that the small monk was a genius in mecha piloting. Not only was he very talented in piloting the mecha. Furthermore, his talent in the daily maintenance and repair of mecha was something that no one else could compare to. On the 3rd day after getting the mecha, he dismantled the mecha from head to toe and scattered it all over the floor. When Guojutao, who came to inspect, entered the room and saw the parts on the floor, he was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. Mr. Mo handed over such a high-tech mech to you, but you disassembled it into parts in less than 3 days. Are you out of your mind? On the 7th day, the small monk completely restored the mecha. After dismantling and reassembling the mecha, his understanding of the mecha had far surpassed the theoretical knowledge in books. He could operate it more smoothly. 2 months later, Mosher gave the 1,000 spider drones to the small monk. After the small monk got the 1,000 spider drones, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Although he was only a level 10 psychic, he was still a level 10 psychic. However, with his strength, he could control the mecha and cooperate with the spider drones. Even if he ran into a level 10 scavenger, he could fight against them. Now, Mosher's strength could crush a level 8 scavenger. His strength had no limit when he went crazy. The little monk could fight against level 10 scavenger with his mecha. In the Fire Dragon continent, this kind of strength could already be considered a strong team. However, Mosher felt that this was not enough. So he signed in for 3 months. Finally, his strength was promoted to LV2. After reaching level 2, he was not very excited about his own strength. What he was most excited about was the sea dragon clone. With a thought, his consciousness entered the body of the sea dragon clone. He took a look. Species, Mosasaurus. Level 2 mutated dire beast. Ability, evolution by devouring, dragon psychic attack, lightning attack. The sea dragon clone had devoured too many level 10 mutated beasts before. He should have advanced a long time ago. However, Mosher had been stuck at level 10 Great Hunter for a long time. Therefore, the sea dragon clone was stuck at level 10. When Mosher had broken through to become a scavenger, the sea dragon clone had naturally been promoted to a level 1 mutant dire beast. Now that Mosher was a level 2 scavenger, the sea dragon clone had also become a level 2 mutant dire beast. A level 2 mutant dire beast was equivalent to a level 2 scavenger. And in the entire Flaming Land, scavenger hunters were only a small part of the population. Even in a certain force or a certain academy, there were only a few scavenger hunters. Therefore, once one became a scavenger, one would become a true powerhouse. Once one became a scavenger, one could rope in a group, establish a gang, and occupy a mountain. And now, the strength of the sea dragon clone was equivalent to a level 2 scavenger. Mosher finally had the confidence to go to the Flaming Land. The sea dragon clone, the oracle, Happy, the cheetah mecha, all of these made Mosher full of confidence. Moreover, these were not his greatest trump cards. His greatest trump card was actually in the Flaming Land. Since he was ready to go to the Flaming Land, the next thing was to consider who to take with him. One person or a few people against the entire continent sounded very hot-blooded, but it was not very realistic after all. On the contrary, Mosher planned to move the entire base directly to the first hunting island. Even if they could do some logistics work, it would be good enough. With them producing food, cooking, washing clothes, and so on, he could still live a life on the Flaming Land. And now that the Dragon Palace had been upgraded, their levels would also increase quickly. In the past 3 months, some scavenger hunters had become level 10 scavenger hunters. There were also those psychokinesis that Mosher had blessed, who had broken through to level 1 psychic masters. He believed that in the near future, the strength of the entire base would definitely not be weaker than the Sandstorm mercenary group. Of course, Mosher did not want to force them. He called Guojutao over and said to him, after experiencing so much, "You must know that there is another world outside of Earth." Guojutao said in a somewhat feminine voice. "Yes. The people in the base are now guessing that there are aliens. The technology on the equipment of more than 2,000 people is not from Earth at all. And Mr. Mo, your cheetah mech is obviously not from Earth." This has made everyone panic. Some people even said that if the aliens attacked Earth in a large scale, even Mr. Mo may not be able to stop them. Hearing this, Mosher smiled faintly. "What do you think?" Guojutao was stunned by the question. To be honest, he was willing to believe Mosher. But if the aliens really did attack, no matter how strong Mr. Mo was, he could not protect the entire Earth alone. Mosher naturally understood what he meant. He said with a smile, "I plan to take people to the alien planet. Whoever is willing to follow me can go with me." Guojutao was directly stunned. The more than 2,000 aliens that appeared last time were all as powerful as gods. Now everyone in the base was secretly praying that those aliens would not come to Earth again. In their opinion, if those aliens were to come again, it would definitely be a disaster for Earth. But Mr. Mo was going to directly attack the alien planet. Was he going crazy? Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Guojutao looked into Mosher's eyes and asked, "Mr. Mo, are you joking?" Mosher did not directly answer him. Instead, he said, "Issue an order that those who are willing to follow me to the alien planet will set off in 3 days. Those who are not willing to go, I won't force them." Guojutao was stunned again. Mr. Mo did not have the slightest intention of joking. So, it was actually true. This Chapter 239. At Mo Shi's request, the news that he was going to attack an alien planet quickly spread throughout the base. The entire base was in an uproar. Are there really aliens? Of course. Since Mr. Mo said so, how could it be fake? But can our bodies adapt to going to an alien planet? If the 2,000 people who came last time were aliens, then wouldn't it be too dangerous to go to an alien planet? What are you afraid of? No matter how powerful the aliens are, can they survive the word death? Besides, isn't Mr. Mo here? When the order was given, the people in the base did not do anything. Instead, they were all discussing it. After all, the aliens had just appeared. Many of them could not accept the fact that aliens had appeared. Now, they were asked to go to an alien planet. It was too hasty and sudden. Most of the people who had such thoughts were older. Firstly, they were conservative. Secondly, they were old and did not want to change places. Was it not good to live the rest of their lives in the base? Why did they have to go to other places to suffer? Of course, there were also some young people and some powerful psychokinesis and hunters. They were born with the desire for adventure. They naturally would not miss the opportunity to go to another planet to see it. Secondly, they also knew that with Mr. Mo in front of them, they would encounter less danger. In the end, after 2 days of discussion, almost half of the people were willing to go to the Flaming Land with Mo Shi. Almost 50,000 people. On the third day, the people who planned to go with Mo Shi began to pack their things, pack their luggage, and say goodbye to their friends and family. On the third day, Mo Shi led these people and waved goodbye to the remaining 50,000 people in the base. The remaining 50,000 people in the base did not know that only 2 years later, they would regret it. Of course, this was a story for later. Mo Shi led the 50,000 people to the coordinates more than 100 kilometers away from the base. Guojutao followed Mo Shi's instructions and took out the 2,500 watches left by the Sandstorm mercenary group and distributed them to the 2,500 people. Mo Shi told them how to operate it. Then, he led Happy, the young monk, and the others to click on the teleport button. In the next moment, their figures turned into bluish-white balls of light and disappeared. Just a dozen seconds later, in the teleportation hall of Hunting Island 1 on the Flaming Dawn mainland. More than 2,500 balls of blue and white light slowly condensed into human figures. Mo Shi and the others were already here. Mo Shi immediately scanned the area with his dragon telekinesis. Everything within a radius of 200 kilometers could be seen. According to his investigation, all the creatures on the first hunting island had been infected with the Zero virus. Including all the plants. As for the humans on Hunting Island number 1, they were naturally infected with the virus Zero. After that, Mo Shi asked everyone to take off their watches and let Guojutao bring them back to Earth. More than 50,000 people were teleported over in batches. As for Mo Shi, he brought Happy, the young monk, and the others out of the relocation hall. The moment the door to the teleportation hall opened, they saw a scarlet world outside. The trees were red, and so was the grass. The pond water was red. The mountains in the distance were also red. When the people who followed Mo Shi saw this scene, they were all secretly shocked. Is this an alien planet? No one answered. Mo Shi did not say anything and continued to walk out. At this time, there was a small bridge over the Scarlet River in front of them. A few zombies were wandering by the bridge. Their skin and flesh were already somewhat rotten. It seemed that with every step they took, a piece of their skin would fall off. Their grayish-white eyes were filled with some kind of desire. Sensing the arrival of humans, they turned their heads and roared from their throats. Roar, roar, from their mouths, which were almost cracked to the back of their heads. One could even see the remnants of rotten flesh hanging on their teeth. Mo Shi opened the blood dragon's eye and looked at these zombies. Species, zombie, level 1 evolved zombie. Mo Shi was slightly stunned. Evolved zombie? The ones on Earth before were mutated zombies, but these were evolved zombies. What was the difference between the two? The system answered and explained, mutated it may become stronger, or it may become weaker. It is uncertain. Evolved, it will definitely become stronger. Mo Shi nodded, indicating that he understood. According to his guess, the strength of a level 1 evolved zombie should be about the same as a level 1 hunter. At this moment, the evolved zombies were already unable to endure their hunger and thirst. One of them leaped and had already taken the lead to move. And its target was Mo Shi, who was at the front. With a leap, it crossed the distance of more than 100 meters. Its speed was far faster than any creature on Earth. Everyone behind Mo Shi was stunned when they saw this scene. Just by pouncing on this zombie, they could feel how powerful this zombie was. If it were any one of them, the only outcome would be to be instantly killed by this zombie. However, Mo Shi lifted his right leg and, at the moment when the evolved zombie jumped over, he fiercely chopped it down. Bang! Under the huge force, the level 1 evolved zombie was directly chopped to the ground. Its entire head exploded. Dark red blood splattered in all directions in a radiating manner. And under its body, the stone ground was directly cracked by Mo Shi's kick. The dark red blood flowed along the cracks and into the ground. The people behind saw how violent Mo Shi was and were all secretly surprised. Mr. Mo was still as violent and powerful as before. Mo Shi opened his mouth and reminded the people behind him, these evolved zombies have extremely strong self-healing factors in their bodies. At least 3 headshots are needed to kill them completely. Hearing this, everyone quickly noted it in their hearts. As for why Mr. Mo had only killed this zombie once, it had already died. No one asked. Nonsense, this was Mr. Mo. It was not strange for anything to happen to Mr. Mo. Of course, they didn't know that Mo Shi's kick just now actually contained energy. In the Flaming Land, ordinary hunters could only release energy through energy weapons. But Mo Shi was different. He had the blood of the Titan Dragon. The blood of the Titan Dragon had transformed the cells in his body, allowing him to release energy as he wished from any part of his body except for energy weapons. With that kick, a huge amount of energy instantly flowed out of the zombie's body. In an extremely short period of time, all of the zombie's cells were killed. Naturally, it could not be revived. Chapter 240. The next few evolved zombies were either level 1 or level 2. But to Mo Shi, it didn't make much of a difference. When the evolved zombies were about to pounce on him, Mo Shi only had to use his mind to control them. In the next moment, the bodies of those evolved zombies suddenly froze on the spot. It was as if they had been immobilized. Then, Mo Shi's dragons were swept across, and the bodies of those evolved zombies instantly turned into purplish-black powder. Like sand sculptures, they flowed all over the ground. At the same time, Mo Shi's dragons will expanded. It enveloped everything within a radius of 50 kilometers. Then, with a thought, all the infected animals, plants, and even microorganisms within a radius of 50 kilometers were turned into purplish-black powder. They were blown away at the same time and flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. In the end, this radius of 50 kilometers was completely covered by purplish-black powder. The people behind Mo Shi only saw that the originally scarlet world turned purplish-black at an extremely fast speed. In the end, they flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. Their eyes widened. They knew that Mr. Mo was very strong, and his telekinesis was also very strong. They had seen Mr. Mo explode those zombies and even humans into a bloody mist. But now, even these flowers, plants, and trees had turned into purplish-black powder. This was completely beyond their understanding. As far as they knew, only the legendary immortals could change the appearance of the entire world. Naturally, they didn't know that these creatures all had the Zero virus in them. And within each strain of the Zero virus, there was a trace of Mo Shi's dragon's will. Therefore, as long as he used his dragon's will, all the Zero virus would die. At this time, Mo Shi used his dragon's will to investigate. From a microscopic perspective, he investigated the changes in the surroundings. He saw that there was no longer a trace of the virus in the purplish-black powder that those creatures had turned into. Instead, after their bodies were decomposed, they became nutrients that could be absorbed by plants. It made this land more fertile. It was more suitable for plants to grow. It was estimated that in at most a month, this land would be covered in green plants. Mosher said to the people behind him, "This land is for you to cultivate." Everyone looked at the purplish-black powder on the ground and were all puzzled. Could such land still be farmed? However, they quickly regained their senses. Since Mr. Amos said that it could be farmed, then it could be farmed. After that, Mosher led the group forward. After crossing the small bridge and walking for a short distance, they saw a factory-like building. However, this factory looked a little different from the factories on Earth. Although it was a little old, a lot of the paint on the railings, stairs, and door had peeled off. However, in the factory, there were some high-tech things everywhere. Disregarding everything else, just the mechas in the factory were an eye-opener for everyone. Of course, these were not combat mechas. They were just some working mechas used in factories. However, these mechas had all stopped working. Mosher asked the little monk behind him, "Can you make them move?" At this moment, the little monk had a look of surprise on his face. "Amitba, what a wonderful thing." He took a few steps forward and carefully observed one of the humanoid mechs. A moment later, he gently pressed the back of the mech's head, and the chip inside popped out. He took out the chip, opened the keyboard at his waist, and put the chip down. His fingers danced quickly on the virtual touch keyboard. A moment later. Soon, he nodded and said, "The chip is intact. It's just that there's no power." In the flaming land, there were 3 sources of power. One was solar energy. The second was crystal energy. The third was zombie energy. Solar energy could be used for normal life, but it was somewhat insufficient to power mechas. Zombie energy was to use the tireless nature of zombies to drive them forward to generate electricity. Previously, the electricity of the entire hunting island was generated by zombies. However, compared to Mosher's ambition, the power generation of zombies was too small. In his vision, he wanted to dominate the entire flaming land in the future. That would require a large number of combat mechas. The super batteries on the combat mechas were equivalent to the power generation of a small power plant. This was naturally not something that a few zombies could do. Therefore, Mosher naturally chose the second one, crystal energy. In the flaming land, there was a kind of ore. Because this ore looked like a crystal, it contained a huge amount of energy. Therefore, it was called crystal energy. Many large factories and military bases used crystal energy as a source of energy. Some of the larger forces had their own crystal energy mines. Of course, Mosher and the others had just arrived, and their strength was not absolutely top-notch. It was naturally impossible to fight for the crystal energy mines. Mosher shook his head slightly. Everything had to start from scratch. Let's move the virtual dragon palace over first. Thinking of this, Mosher said in his mind, "System, move the virtual dragon palace over." The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face level 2 virtual dragon palace. Requires 50 billion evolution points to move." Pfft, cough 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 cough. Mosher coughed violently a few times. Happy, who was beside him, quickly looked at Mosher with concern. At the same time, he patted Mosher's chest. Mosher shook his head and said, "I'm fine." However, in his heart, he had already complained to the system, 50 billion evolution points, you might as well rob it. The system was silent. Mosher checked his evolution points in his mind. Fortunately, there were still close to 80 billion. Anyway, now that he was in the flaming land, there were wild beasts everywhere. Killing a level 1 desolate beast would give him 100,000 evolution points. It's only 50 billion, I don't care. Let's move. Mosher said. In the next moment, the virtual dragon palace quickly appeared in front of him. It quickly covered an area with a radius of 50 kilometers. At this time, not only was the virtual dragon palace's attack and defense much stronger than before, it was also much larger. In Mo Shi's mind, the system's notification sounded again: frowny face, relocation successful, 50 billion evolution points deducted. Mo Shi couldn't help but feel pain. He once again complained in his heart, if you want to deduct, do it secretly. Can you not report it again? After a while, Mo Shi led everyone to the factory's power plant. Since those energy sources were not very practical at the moment, he would try to sign in here and see if there was any solution. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded: frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, number 1 Hunting Island Power Plant. Sign in reward, energy extraction system, energy extraction system. Mo Shi was puzzled and focused his attention on the system backpack. Chapter 241. Mo Shi focused his attention on the energy extraction system in his mind. He saw that it was a very complicated set of equipment. The entire equipment was divided into an extraction chamber, an energy transmission pipeline, a compressor, a filling machine, and so on. Through this set of equipment, the energy in the bodies of desolate beasts, evolved zombies, and even hunters could be extracted for use by the entire base. At the same time, the extracted energy could also be compressed. It could be filled into a super battery. At the same time, there was a construction blueprint in the grid next to the energy extraction system. After Mo Shi carefully read the introduction of the energy extraction system, he couldn't help but smile. What he lacked really came. He was just worrying about energy, but in the end, he directly signed into the energy extraction system. At this time, Guojutao had already brought another group of people over. Mo Shi waved at him. Guojutao hurried forward. Mo Shi took out the construction blueprint from his backpack. He said, find an engineer to dismantle this set of power generation equipment, then construct according to the blueprint and install this set of equipment. As he spoke, Mo Shi moved his mind. He took out the set of energy extraction equipment from his backpack. There were many parts of this set of equipment, and the open space within a kilometer in front of the factory was completely occupied. Guojutao was puzzled. They had just arrived at the factory, so the power generation equipment should be the most important. Why dismantle it? But he didn't ask any more questions. Mr. Mo naturally had his reasons for doing things. So Guojutao nodded and said, yes. Then he turned around and went to look for the engineer in the base. Next, Mo Shi led everyone around the entire factory. The various high-tech equipment in the factory made these earthlings gasp in amazement. Especially the large number of robots in the factory with different shapes, which amazed everyone. As long as there was enough energy to make these robots move, then, the labor needed in the base would be very little. This way, they would be able to free up time to train. This made them very glad that they could follow Mr. Mo to an alien planet. They thought that the alien planet was full of powerful aliens, and they would probably face a very fierce battle. They didn't expect that there were no other humans in the place they were teleported to. The ready-made factories, robots, and various mechas were all left for them. As for those powerful creatures, in front of Mr. Mo, they were just a matter of a sweep of his mind. Therefore, they were safer here than on Earth. Then, Mo Shi went outside and released the sea dragon clone. There were countless wild beasts on the first hunting island. Previously, these dire beasts were only level 1 to level 3. However, now that they had been infected with the Zero virus, their bodies had been strengthened once again. Many of them had broken through to level 5 or even level 6. It was enough for the sea dragon clone to devour. After doing all this, Mo Shi returned to the factory again. He chose the best room and made it his and Happy's bedroom. Now that everything had been arranged properly, what he needed to do next was to increase his strength as quickly as possible. No one else had come to Hunting Island 1 yet. However, Mo Shi estimated that it wouldn't be long before someone arrived. The most likely culprit was the Sandstorm mercenary group. One had to know that this mercenary group had over 30,000 people. Their captain and several vice-captains had never returned to Hunting Island 1 since they arrived there. They would definitely come looking for him. In fact, Mo Shi was right. In fact, more than a month ago, the only remaining vice-captain of the Sandstorm mercenary group couldn't contact the captain and the other vice-captains, so he had already sent a few people to find him. However, these people's strength was very average. Therefore, when they saw the terrifying scene of infected creatures everywhere on Hunting Island 1, they had no idea what was going on here. He hurriedly fled the place in fear. Time passed slowly, but it also passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Mo Shi and the 50,000 people had been in the Flaming Land for more than 2 months. In the past 2 months, Mo Shi had checked in all over the first hunting ground and obtained a lot of things. Although most of these things didn't increase his individual strength by much. However, they were extremely beneficial to the development of the base. Not to mention other things, just the seeds of various plants and animals alone were enough for him to get a lot of them. Due to the difference in soil, it was impossible for the seeds from Earth to germinate here. However, the seeds of the vegetables, grains, and fruits that Mo Shi got from checking in were guaranteed to germinate within 3 days after they were planted. Now, more than 300 acres of land had been reclaimed around the base. On the first 100 acres of land that had been reclaimed, many vegetables had already grown and would ripen in another month. At the same time, the wheat, corn, rice, cotton, and other domestic crops had already sprouted. These crops were originally not in the same season. However, on Hunting Island 1, it was spring all year round. The domestic crops that Mo Shi got from the system had no seasonal restrictions at all. Basically, they would mature in half a year. Therefore, no matter what kind of crop it would only take more than 5 months to harvest. Of course, the scale of the entire farm wasn't large at the moment. After all, it was reclaimed from scratch and it relied entirely on manpower. However, as long as the energy extraction equipment was installed, the robots could be driven to work. By then, the scale of the base farm would increase exponentially. On this day, Mo Shi doubled his check-in and got another 100 kilograms of wheat seeds. Just as he was about to give these wheat seeds to Guojutao had already arrived. His face was full of excitement. With a somewhat feminine voice, he said, "Mr. Mo, the energy extraction equipment has been installed. Now, we just need to catch some infected creatures to test it." Mo Shi nodded. "Well, let them get ready and test it later." "Yes." Guojutao left. After only 5 minutes, Mo Shi brought more than 50 evolved zombies and more than 100 evolved zombies to the entrance of the energy extraction chamber. He didn't use iron chains to tie these infected creatures. But these infected creatures were very obedient. One by one, they lowered their heads and followed behind Mo Shi. It was like a child who had made a mistake at school and was brought home by their parents. Everyone was surprised when they saw this scene. After more than a month, they already knew how powerful these infected creatures were. In front of these infected creatures, these people were basically vegetables. But now, these infected creatures were so obedient in front of Mr. Mo. What was going on? Of course, they didn't know that this was because Mo Shi had used 2 skills to summon zombies and summon wild beasts. These infected creatures were naturally obedient to Mo Shi. Chapter 242. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Mo Shi brought those powerful infected creatures to the door of the extraction cabin. The extraction cabin was a cylindrical, enclosed space with a radius of more than 500 meters. The entire cylindrical wall was transparent. On the wall, there were 10 1-meter diameter pipes connected to a converter in another room through the ceiling. Mo Shi came to the door of the cabin, and the door opened to both sides. Mo Shi turned his head and said to the infected creatures behind him, "Go in." Those infected creatures immediately obediently entered the extraction cabin. After the cabin door closed, Mo Shi nodded to the engineer. "Tua, you can start." The engineer surnamed Bao replied, "Yes." As he spoke, he gave orders to the few people on the control panel behind him. Those people immediately began to get busy. Soon, there was a roar in the extraction cabin. Whoosh, along with the roar, fiery red energy was immediately extracted from those infected creatures. Whether it was the evolved zombies or the desolate beasts. At the same time as the energy in their bodies was extracted. Their bodies were like deflated balloons, quickly shriveling. Soon, only skin and bones were left. When the people outside saw this scene, an inexplicable panic arose in their hearts. They couldn't help but think about what would happen if someone entered the extraction cabin. However, skin and bones were not the end. The strength of the extraction cabin was that it didn't just extract the energy in these creatures. It also included the heat in these creatures' bodies, and even the weak heat emitted from their cells. In the end, when all the energy and heat in the bodies of these infected creatures were extracted, their bodies, including their fur and clothes, turned into black powder. However, this was not the end. At this time, on the floor of the extraction cabin, countless small holes as thick as an arm opened. A strong suction force came from inside, sucking in all the black powder. This black powder would enter the warehouse on the other side of the pipeline, be transported to the farmland, and be sprinkled on the farmland as fertilizer. Everything on the infected creatures was squeezed dry, leaving nothing behind. This was the terrifying part of the extraction cabin. At this time, the energy extracted by the extraction cabin had already passed through the pipeline and arrived at the conversion room on the other side. The energy was converted into electricity through the conversion. Following the order of the contractor, the main power switch in the factory was turned on. The next moment, all the lights in the factory lit up. Whoosh! The more than 50,000 people in the factory immediately boiled with excitement. When they were in the base, they had to conserve electricity. But at least there was still 2 hours of electricity at night. However, after arriving at Hunting Island 1, there was no electricity at all. These days lasted for more than 2 months. Now, it was finally electrified. How could they not be excited? Then, the worker took Mosher to another filling room. In the filling room, there were already 2 cylindrical batteries that had been filled. Each battery was emitting a fiery red fluorescence. The contractor opened the clasp and took out a battery. Her eyes were filled with joy as she said to Mosher, "You're right. Mr. Mo, this is the first super battery that we've filled. The power in this battery is enough to last our entire base for a month." Mosher nodded and beckoned to the little monk behind him. The little monk hurried forward. Mosher handed the battery to him. The little monk didn't need Mosher to say anything. He already understood what Mosher meant. He went behind a lifting robot outside the door. He put the super battery into it. Then, he turned on the virtual keyboard and his fingers flew. The next moment, the eyes of the lifting robot suddenly lit up with blue light. Then, he strode towards the empty space in the middle of the factory, where a pile of dismantled waste was. He picked up a stone slab that weighed more than 10 tons and walked out. He threw the stone slab into the filling hopper of the huge grinder that looked like the mouth of a beast. Under the operation of the worker next to him, the grinder began to work. The contractor said, "This super battery is enough for this robot to use for 2 months." Seeing this scene, everyone clapped excitedly. With the super battery, all robots and mechas would be able to move in the future. Their work efficiency would increase by a large margin. For the next 10 days, Mosher would summon hundreds of infected creatures into the base and into the extraction chamber every day. He no longer needed to personally lead the team. People saw these infected creatures enter the base automatically and enter the extraction chamber automatically. All of them admired Mosher from the bottom of their hearts. Only Mr. Mo could have such a godly method. Soon, all the robots and mechas in the base were equipped with super batteries. Therefore, whether it was production or planting, the efficiency of all aspects was greatly improved. 2 months later, these agricultural robots had already cultivated 5,000 mu of land. This land was enough to produce food for 50,000 people. Now, all aspects of the base were on the right track. Due to the many living robots, people's lives were much more convenient. The super battery produced by the energy extraction system was enough for the entire base to use for a long time. On this day, the contractor came to look for Mo Shi. He said to Mo Shi, "Mr. Mo, our current stock of super batteries is enough for the entire base to use for a year. So, I suggest that we can use this excess energy in other aspects. For example, developing technology." Mo Shi smiled and shook his head. "No, continue to produce batteries." The contractor was stunned and said, "Mr. Mo, if we want to continue to improve the living standards of our base, we must develop technology, otherwise." Mo Shi interrupted the contractor and said, "Mastering energy is equivalent to mastering everything. As for technology, it's too troublesome to develop. It's better to plunder." Plunder? The contractor was puzzled. He naturally didn't know Mo Shi's plan. Mo Shi intended to build a mecha army. If the base wanted to develop, it must improve its strength. At present, it would take at least 10 years for the strength of the humans in the base to reach the level of a desolate hunter, even with the acceleration of the Dragon Palace. Instead of this, it was better to build a mecha army. And the most important thing for a mecha army was sufficient energy. This was the reason why Mo Shi could produce batteries without limit. As for where to find the mechas or how to produce them, Mo Shi had a rough idea in his mind. Looking at the blue sky outside the window and the old porcupine flying by, Mo Shi's heart was full of longing. Imagine thousands of mechas, equivalent to the level of a desolate hunter, sweeping across the sky. How domineering would that be? Chapter 243. The war in the future was ultimately a war of energy. And now, Mo Shi had mastered energy that was ahead of the flaming continent. One had to know that solar energy and crystalline energy were still commonly used on the flaming origin continent. Mo Shi's energy extraction technology was completely beyond their plane. With energy, the next step was to develop combat mechas. Mo Shi thought that he should be able to obtain the technology and equipment to make combat mechas by signing in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured. But he had just arrived and did not know much about the flaming continent. So he decided to put this plan aside for the time being. Of course, with the little monk's intelligence and the knowledge and experience of the contractor, he also had a ready-made cheetah mech. It was not difficult to come up with the technology to manufacture combat mechas. But Mo Shi thought that the system's products would be more advanced than theirs. So he planned to sign in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured when he had the chance in the future. The most important thing now was to increase his and the base's strength as much as possible. It would be safer to sign in at those places when his strength increased. Therefore, for the next period of time, Mo Shi signed in every day in the virtual Dragon Palace. 8 drops of dragon blood every day. He estimated that he would be able to level up again in a year or so. At the same time, he could also get more than 100 million evolution points by summoning infected creatures into the extraction chamber every day. In addition to the evolution points from the sea dragon clone and the clone on Earth, he could get more than 300 million evolution points every day. He estimated that in 2 months, he would get more than 10 billion evolution points. At that time, the system would be able to level up again. On this day, Mo Shi had nothing to do, so he was enjoying the scenery of Hunting Island No. 1 with happy. At the same time, about 25,000 people were flying toward Hunting Island No. 1 on hoverboards. These 25,000 people were all the remaining members of the Sandstorm mercenary group. The person in the lead was the only remaining vice captain of the Sandstorm mercenary group. Level 7 Hunter, Ding Zhicheng. This person was a middle-aged man who looked rough but was actually very careful. That was why Shachi let him stay in the group when he left. Beside him was a young man. This young man had long black hair that was as shiny as a cow's lick. Her white clothes were as clean and white as the new bedsheets in the hospital. Ding Zhicheng said flatteringly. "Young Master Wu Erden, as the young master of the Black Pack gang, you don't have to come to this remote hunting island." The white-clothed Wu Erdan laughed out loud and said, "That's right. How can this young master compare to those hedonistic sons of rich parents?" My father didn't send me to Hunting Island 1 to have fun. Ding Zhiqing nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. Those playboys are not even worthy of carrying young Master Wu Erden's shoes. Erden smiled politely and looked in the direction of Hunting Island number 1. Tell me more about Hunting Island 1. Ding Zhiqing nodded and said, that was about 5 months ago. Our leader, along with a few other vice leaders and 5,000 brothers, came to Hunting Island number 1. After that, we lost contact. When I sent people over to investigate, they found that this place had already been occupied by infected creatures. Through the surveillance drones, there are almost no living people here. So I thought that our Sandstorm mercenary group would join hands with your gang to clean up this Hunting Island number 1. Don't think that this Hunting Island number 1 is worthless. In fact, our leader has already said that there is a crystal source vein under this Hunting Island number 1. And the reserves are very rich. Wu Erdan nodded and asked again, since there is a crystal source vein, why didn't the island owner at that time exploit it? Ding Zhiqing smiled and said, young Master Wu Erdan, the strength of Hunting Island number 1 before was only considered insignificant in the entire continent. Even if they could exploit it, they couldn't defend it. The white-clothed Wu Erdan nodded, you're right. They have the vein but no strength, and our Black Pack gang has the strength but no vein. Now that Hunting Island number 1 is deserted, we just happen to occupy this Hunting Island. Speaking of this, he glanced at Ding Zhiqing next to him without a trace. He said, don't worry, you found the vein here. Of course, your Sandstorm mercenary group will benefit. This was what Ding Zhiqing wanted to hear. He quickly put on a smile and nodded. Thank you, young Master Wu Erdan. As they spoke, they had already arrived above Hunting Island number 1. They didn't choose to land directly. Instead, they released more than 500 drones to explore the island. Through the videos taken by the drones, they found that the island had basically turned blood red. The animals were blood red. The plants were blood red. The mountains were blood red. The water was also blood red. It was as if this was a blood red world. But after a while, 2 drones flew above the center of the island and made a shocking discovery. They saw that there was a circular ground in the middle of the blood red. On this circular ground, there were large patches of green plants. On the blood red island, there was a patch of green land with a radius of 50 kilometers. This made Wu Erdan and Ding Zhiqing very surprised. When the camera zoomed in, they could see that it was basically all crops. In the middle of the fields, there was a large factory. From the sky, they could see that there were robots and humans in both the fields and the factories. When Ding Zhiqing saw this, he was both shocked and terrified. He quickly explained to Wu Erdan next to him, young Master Wu Erdan, the last time I sent people to investigate here, they were in a hurry and didn't explore the center. I didn't mean to deceive the Black Pack gang. Wu Erdan smoothed out the corner of his shirt that was fluttering in the wind and smiled kindly. There's always an accident. It's inevitable. Who do you think they are? Ding Zhiqing thought for a while and replied, it should be the original owner of Hunting Island number 1, Beale. I guess, maybe some kind of virus broke out here and they can't solve it. But he can't bear to move away from Hunting Island number 1, so he's holed up in this factory. Because the virus broke out on Hunting Island number 1, communication was also destroyed, so we can't contact them. At this point, Ding Zhiqing added another sentence, of course, it's also possible that after the virus broke out, the entire Hunting Island was occupied by zombies and infected creatures. Someone else discovered the mineral veins here first, and they were the first to get here. At this point, his face became a little serious. To be able to survive in this place where infected creatures were everywhere, the strength of this faction must not be underestimated. Wu Erdan smiled and nodded. Then he said a domineering sentence, no matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them. 244 Python genetic weapon. Wu Erdan looked at the green field in the middle of the Scarlet Hunting Island in the video. He said a domineering sentence, no matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them. This was the style of the Black Pack Gang. Domineering, domineering. When Ding Jiqing heard this, he also nodded his head. Then he said to the mercenary controlling the drone, "Check the strength of the entire base." The mercenary nodded and his fingers danced on the keyboard. Soon, the drone released an invisible wave that spread throughout the base. Then, according to the reflected wave, everyone's strength was accurately measured. Looking at the data on the screen, Ding Jiqing doubted his eyes. Level 2 Hunter. 1 person. Great Hunter. 133 people. More than 30,000 hunters. 2 Level 1 Psychic Masters. The rest are all zombie hunters and psychokinesis. The others heard this and looked at each other. Damn, this strength was too weak. Any level 3 hunter from their mercenary group could destroy this factory. Wu Dan flicked his hair and asked, "Is there a problem with the drone?" Ding Jiqing nodded. "It's possible." This was the only explanation. Otherwise, how could this group of unbelievably weak people be able to defend this place in a place filled with infected creatures and desolate beasts? "Send a few more drones to check it out," Ding Jiqing said. The keyboard player quickly nodded. After a while, the results came back. Everyone quickly looked at the screen. It's exactly the same as before. But this is impossible. Ding Jiqing said, although the people on the first hunting island were weak, they couldn't be this weak. Wu Dan waved his hand domineeringly. "In that case, let's go directly to the factory and destroy them." Ding Jiqing was very careful and said cautiously, "Master Wu Dan, this is a bit strange. Let's figure it out first." Wu Dan smiled and asked, "How many hunters above level 3 in your mercenary group? How many psychic masters above level 3? Ding Jiqing replied, "There are more than 3,000 hunters above level 3. There are more than 200 greedy masters above level 3. Wu Dan smiled. Any one of them could easily destroy this lousy place. Now there are more than 3,200 people. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy is a joke. What are you afraid of?" Ding Jiqing heard this and nodded. Master Wu Dan is right. Then he said to all the mercenaries behind him, "Go to the center of the hunting island and destroy that factory." Although he was still a little worried, he couldn't refuse Master Wu Dan's request. And Master Wu Dan was right. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy was a joke. After a while, these more than 25,000 people had already arrived above the base. They looked down at the humans below with a disdainful smile on their faces. To them, any one of the people below was a noob. At the same time, the people in the fields below, who were controlling the robots to farm, also noticed the black mass of humans flying over from the sky. They were all shocked. "Oh no, there are intruders." They still remembered that when they were on Earth, there were more than 2,000 people floating above their heads, looking down at them from a high vantage point. They were like a group of insufferably arrogant immortals, looking down on all living beings. Now, these insufferably arrogant guys appeared again. But last time, Mr. Mo was not in the base. This time, Mr. Mo was in the factory not far away. Thinking of this, everyone felt a lot more at ease. Someone quickly reported to the factory with a communicator. "Intruders, intruders." Soon, the people above the factory also came out. They looked up at the sky, which was like a group of dark clouds. Just like when they were on Earth, they looked up to that group of people. But the difference was that at that time, there was only fear, shock, and despair in their hearts. But now, they were only curious. They were curious about what this group of people was doing here. As for fear and despair, there was no trace of it. Happy and Mr. Mo were here. If these people dared to make a move, they would be courting death. At the same time, Guojutao found Mo sure in the factory. He reported, "Mr. Mo, there are intruders. Rough estimate, there are more than 20,000 people." Mo sure took a sip of the tea that Happy had just brewed and nodded. "Well, not bad. Guojutao looked at Mo Shi's relaxed appearance and knew that he did not have to worry too much. With Mr. Mo's strength, it should not be a problem to deal with these people. Thinking of this, he said, Mr. Mo, I'll go out first. Mo Shi shook his head and said with a chuckle, let's take a look together. As he said that, he clapped his hands. On one of the walls of the room, the surveillance screen of the entire base suddenly appeared. Mo Shi said, above the factory. The screen immediately changed to the top of the base. In the screen, more than 20,000 people were looking at the base below with disdain. Guojutao could not help but feel nervous and asked, Mr. Mo, don't we need to go out? Mo Shi took a sip of tea and said again, just watch. Although Guojutao did not understand why, since Mo Shi said that he could just watch, he was happy to be idle. At the same time, in the sky, the more than 20,000 people were looking down at the base. That Erden stroked the bangs in front of his forehead, glanced at the ants below and said, let's start. Ding Zhicheng replied, yes, young Master Erden. Behind Ding Zhicheng, a level 5 hunter volunteered to fight, leader, I can do it alone. You and your brothers, as well as young Master Erden, can watch the show from the side. Ding Zhicheng nodded, okay. Sending a level 5 hunter to deal with the ants below was already giving them a lot of face. That level 5 hunter received the order and immediately flashed a genetic weapon on his right arm. It was actually a 100-meter-long, python-shaped genetic weapon. He was in the air, and the genetic weapon on his right arm was swung downwards. He shouted, you're just an ant. Die. The next moment, that python-shaped genetic weapon was like a 100-meter-long thick pillar, smashing down towards the base. In his eyes, there was already a bloodthirsty gaze. He had not killed anyone for a few months. Today, he was going to have a good time. However, at this moment, a strange change occurred. When his genetic weapon smashed into the air, it seemed to have smashed into an invisible barrier. Bang! Not only did it not smash down. Instead, it was bounced back. Luckily, he withdrew his strength quickly. Otherwise, when it bounced back, it would have smashed his head and made him bleed. If a level 5 hunter's head was smashed by his own genetic weapon, that would be a joke. Chapter 244. A level 5 hunter's all-out attack not only did not cause any damage to the base below, but his genetic weapon also bounced back. And he almost hit his own head. This made everyone a little surprised. Old 8, what's going on? You can't even handle a group of rookies? What are you doing? Some people also saw that something was wrong and asked, Old 8, what's going on? Old 8's face was ugly, and he shook his head. Nothing. Losing face in front of so many people, especially in front of young Master Wu Erden, was something he would never allow. He straightened his body and said, that was just a warm-up. After that, his genetic weapon shrunk to 1/2 meter long. Then, the entire genetic weapon lit up with a glaring red and white light. Everyone was stunned. He was going to use an energy weapon. Facing a group of rookies, he was going to use an energy weapon. Did Old 8 eat shit? Old 8 naturally guessed what everyone was thinking, but that strange scene just now made him have to be careful. Since he could not smash down, then he could only use an invincible energy weapon. Soon, at the tip of his energy weapon, a fiery red light shot out. It instantly attacked the crowd below. However, the fiery red ray of light was unable to descend any further when it was halfway there. Then, above the entire base below, a light shield appeared. This light shield seemed to be made up of countless hexagons the size of houses. It covered the entire base. At this time, no matter how much strength Old 8 used, his energy could not break through the light shield. When the other mercenaries saw this, they were all shocked. This small base's defense was strong enough. It could even block the energy beam of a level 5 hunter. Old 8 saw this and frowned. The energy in his body surged, and the second energy beam was about to form. However, at this time, Xiao, a black shadow suddenly shot out from the base. Old 8 saw this and quickly wanted to dodge. However, the speed of the black shadow far exceeded Old 8's reaction ability. Chi! It instantly pierced through Old 8's chest. It directly pierced through Old 8's body. Then, the black shadow flew forward for thousands of meters before landing on the ground. It was stuck on the ground at an angle. As for Old 8's body, it was like an eagle that had been shot and fell to the ground. Soon, he fell into the light barrier. At that moment, everyone was greatly alarmed. They looked at the black shadow that had hit Old 8. It was an arrow. No, to be exact, it should be a spear. Although it looked like an arrow, it was more than 3 meters long. Its entire body was pitch black. Under the sunlight, it emitted a metallic luster. The shape of the arrow was very peculiar. The tail feathers of the arrow looked like a pair of small wings. Everyone in the mercenary group was shocked. The person who could throw this long arrow could kill a level 5 hunter in one hit, and the level 5 hunter didn't even have time to react. So this person's strength should be at least a level 7 hunter. This completely contradicted the results of the drone's investigation. At the same time, in Mo Shi's office in the factory. When Guo Jutao saw this scene, he was also very puzzled. In the base, other than Mr. Mo, could it be that there was another expert that they did not know about? Thinking of this, he could not help but take a look at Mo Shi. At this time, Mo Shi was still sipping tea, with a relaxed smile, casually staring at the screen. At this time, in the sky. When Ding Jiqing saw this scene, he frowned slightly. In this small base, there was a hidden expert. And in some way, he avoided the detection of their drone. Sure enough, no matter at any time, he could not be careless. He took a look at Erden next to him. He saw that Erden was also slightly surprised. But this surprise was just a flash. Then he laughed. This broken base, there is a hidden expert. In this case, let's cut the Gordian knot. Let's see how long this hidden expert can hide. When Ding Jiqing heard this, he naturally understood Erden's meaning. He said, "Master Erden, don't worry, I will let people take care of this broken base." As he said this, he waved to all the brothers behind him. "Everyone, do it." The execution ability of these mercenaries of the Sandstorm mercenary group was beyond doubt. In the next moment, the 25,000 people actually took action at the same time. All the hunters' genetic weapons lit up, and at the same time, they attacked the light shield below. All the psychic power of the Grand Psychic Masters also spread out together. They wanted to find the weakness of this energy light shield. However, very quickly, reality slapped them in the face once again. All their genetic weapons, and even many people's energy weapons, landed solidly on that energy light shield. And the result was, whether it was their genetic weapon attack, their energy weapon attack, or the psychic power of the Grand Psychic Masters, none of them could penetrate that energy light shield. And they could not cause any damage to that light shield. On the contrary, from within the energy light shield, huge black arrows were shot out one after another. Puff, 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 every time an arrow was shot out, a mercenary's body was pierced. And it was the kind that was directly killed. In the beginning, they only suspected that there was a hidden expert in the base. But soon, they found out that they were wrong. Because more and more huge black arrows were shot out from the base. They were shot out in groups. And these mercenaries, whether they were hunters or Grand Psychic Masters. In the face of those black arrows, there was only one result, death. Until now, they only knew. In the base, there was a group of experts hidden. And they were experts whose strength was far beyond theirs. In just a short while, more than 2,000 of them had been killed in an instant. And the most frightening thing was that so many people had died, but they did not even see the shadow of the opponent. "Young Master Erden, there are many hidden experts here, let's retreat quickly." Ding Jiqing shouted while protecting Erden. At this time, Erden no longer had his previous pride and arrogance. This small base below actually hid so many experts. Facing such experts, if they did not escape now, when would they? Thinking of this, he flipped his black hair and shouted, "Let's go." Ding Zhiqing quickly called a group of brothers over to protect Erden and quickly escaped from this place. Behind them, the soldiers of the Sandstorm mercenary group were pierced by the huge black arrows one by one and fell down. Soon, they escaped 50 kilometers away. They thought that they were already safe. However, the huge black arrows were still shooting out from behind. There were still hunters who were killed in an instant. Everyone was shocked. This F*** killing range was too big. They had already escaped 50 kilometers away, but it was still not safe. "Keep running," Ding Zhiqing quickly shouted. Chapter 245. The sky above the Scarlet Hunting Island No. 1 was filled with humans, like a dark cloud. But at this moment, these humans were all panicking. They quickly fled into the distance. Behind them, giant black arrows were flying. Every arrow would penetrate a mercenary's body, killing him instantly. No matter what trump cards they had, they were just a joke in front of the giant black arrows. Some people's genetic weapons were shields, but their genetic weapons were easily penetrated by the giant black arrows. Some people's genetic weapons were a complete set of armor, but their armor could not withstand a single blow from the giant black arrows. This was the terrifying part of the Virtual Dragon Palace's attack. As long as one was targeted by the virtual arrow tower of the Virtual Dragon Palace, one would be in extreme danger within 100 kilometers. What the hell is this place? Erden cursed as he fled. As a level 4 hunter, the panic in his heart was far greater than that of the others. He had thought that coming to Hunting Island No. 1 would be a relaxing and enjoyable thing. He had thought of it as a vacation. But he did not expect that there were people on Hunting Island No. 1 and that they were so strong. If he had known, he would rather be forced to train at home than come to this godforsaken place. Finally, after they had fled for more than 100 kilometers, there were no more black arrows coming from behind. They finally heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the Sandstorm mercenary group again. They had already lost more than 3,000 people. Ding Zhiqing's face was extremely ugly. They had come to Hunting Island No. 1 with full confidence because they wanted to occupy the island and not leave anyone else a chance. But they did not expect such a strong existence to be hidden on Hunting Island No. 1. They had lost more than 3,000 people before they even saw the shadow of their opponent. This was F*** ridiculous. Erden glanced behind him and said with lingering fear, "That's right. This place is too creepy. When I go back, I'll talk to my old man and ask him to send people to flatten this godforsaken place." Ding Zhiqing quickly nodded. "Yes, our Sandstorm mercenary group can't handle this place. If we want to get the crystal source vein, we need the strong people from the Black Tua gang." Erden nodded and said, "Don't worry. Once I go back, I'll ask my old man to send people over." Ding Zhiqing quickly said, "That's the best, that's the best." Then, he looked behind him. "Young Master Erden, this place is too close to the first hunting island. It's still not safe. It wouldn't be good if the experts there chased after them. Let's hurry back to the mercenary group first." Then, more than 20,000 of them escorted Erden and fled into the distance. Soon, they were more than 400 kilometers away from base No. 1. Hunting Island No. 1, Mo Shi's office. Guojutao couldn't help but smile when he saw those people running away in a panic from the video. The people of the Flaming Dawn continent had always thought of themselves as superior and superior. Therefore, every time they arrived at the base, they would act high and mighty as if they were gods. This made all of them very unhappy. Today, everyone in the base couldn't help but feel refreshed when they saw those people fleeing miserably. But what puzzled Guojutao was, who was the one who did it? Where did that energy barrier come from? But before he could ask, Mo Shi had already put down his teacup. At the same time, a faint light began to appear between the fingers of his right hand. This light was only the size of a sesame seed. It was blood red. At first, the light was very weak, far less than the light of a match. But gradually, this ray of light became stronger. It gradually became brighter than a match. Slowly, it became brighter than a candle. Then, it became brighter than a bonfire. After a full 10 minutes, this blood-red light seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. The whole office was dyed blood-red by the light. In the center of the light, there was still a sesame seed-sized light spot. However, Guojutao only took a glance at it and immediately felt a chill down his spine. He didn't even dare to take a second look at it. This small light spot seemed to come from the depths of hell, carrying a biting cold murderous aura and a monstrous bloodthirsty aura. "This is," Guojutao asked in panic. "Telekinesis." Mo Shi only said 2 words in a bland tone. However, these 2 words completely subverted Guojutao's understanding. In his knowledge, telekinesis was completely invisible and intangible. It was just a human's brain waves. However, telekinesis was much stronger than a human's brain waves. Telekinesis was invisible and intangible. It could not be seen or touched. But now, Mo Shi had condensed a sesame seed-sized light spot in his hand, and he actually said that this was telekinesis. How was this possible? In fact, this was not Mo Shi's telekinesis, but dragon's will. After he compressed all his dragon's will to the limit, he formed such a small dragon's will light spot. Then, Mo Shi flicked his right middle finger gently. Whoosh, that small light spot immediately left his finger. It instantly passed through the window and flew towards the sky. The small light spot emitted a blood-red light that seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. This blood-red light quickly illuminated the entire base. Everyone who was busy with their work was stunned. Because the light was too dazzling, they couldn't see the blood-red light spot at all. They could only see the blood-red light that filled the sky. This blood-red light that filled the sky looked like a scene of doomsday. However, this situation only lasted for less than 3 seconds. Soon, the blood-red light that filled the sky flew into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Because it was too fast, people could only see a huge blood-red light in front of them, with a blood-red tail more than 10 kilometers long behind it. It was like a blood-red comet. This blood-red comet cut through the sky and quickly disappeared into the horizon. Everyone in the base was shocked to the point of being dumbfounded. They didn't know that this was Mo Shi's dragon's will. They only thought that this was a natural phenomenon. What the hell is this? Does anyone know that this is a normal natural phenomenon in the Flaming Dawn continent? This is too shocking. This is too shocking. At the same time, 500 kilometers to the east of the base, the 22,000 people of the Sandstorm mercenary group had landed on the ground to rest. A mercenary said, "We've escaped 500 kilometers. We're finally safe." Another mercenary nodded. "As long as the hidden expert in the base doesn't chase us out, we'll be safe." Judging from the situation captured by the drone just now, the hidden expert really didn't chase us out. At the same time, Erden also took a few breaths. He calmed down a little. Looking at the direction of the first hunting island in the distance, he felt a little angry. It wasn't easy to get a job, but he didn't expect to encounter a mysterious expert. He would be scolded by the old man when he went back this time. Damn it, the next time he came out, he would bring a combat suit and raze this place to the ground. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, he suddenly saw a blood-red light coming from the sky above the first hunting island. Chapter 246. On a small island 500 kilometers away from the first hunting island. Although it was called a small island, it had a radius of more than 30 kilometers. At this time, more than 20,000 people landed on this small island that almost no one had ever been to before. The person in the lead was naturally Wu Dan, who was wearing a snow-white robe. Ding Zhiqing next to him said carefully, "Young Master Wu Dan, we were lucky to be able to escape this time." Wu Dan looked in the direction of the first hunting island and sneered. "They were unlucky to be able to escape this time. When I go back this time, I'll ask my old man for a few mechas." We'll raze this place to the ground one by one. He said the last few words with gritted teeth. Obviously, he was very upset about losing face today. After all, the Black Pack gang was the biggest force within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. And as the young master of the Black Pack gang, no matter where he went, those people had to bow to him and flatter him. He didn't expect to be humiliated in such a desolate place. Not only would he be scolded by his old man when he went back, he would also be laughed at by his half-brother. He was angry and naturally wanted to raze this place to the ground. Ding Zhiqing next to him nodded and said, Of course, of course. With the strength of the Black Pack gang, they could easily send a few mechas to raze this place to the ground. What hidden powerhouse? In front of the mechs, he's just trash. While talking, Wu Dan suddenly saw the direction of the first hunting island. A blood-red light was flying in this direction. At the front of this blood-red light was a huge fireball, to be exact, a blood-red fireball. Behind it was a long tail. It looked like a blood-red comet. But this comet was extremely bright. Even the sun in the sky was not as bright as this blood-red comet. Its blood-red light almost dyed half of the sky red. From afar, it dyed the sky and the ground like a sea of blood. And its body was like a deadly comet that rushed out of the sea of blood. Just one look was enough to instill fear in people's hearts. What the hell is that? Behind them, exclamations of surprise could be heard one after another. As a LV7 hunter, Ding Zhiqing was particularly sensitive to that kind of fear. He felt as if all the 36,000 hairs on his body were standing on end. After becoming a level 7 hunter, he had not felt such extreme fear for a long time. In his fear, he couldn't help but cry out. Run! Before he finished speaking, he had already activated his hoverboard shoes. At this time, he didn't even care about Wu Dan who had been treating him carefully. Hearing this, the rest of the people hurriedly activated their hoverboards and fled into the distance. However, how could their speed compare to the speed of a comet? In just 3 short seconds, the blood-red comet came crashing down on them. Boom! At this moment, the scene seemed to freeze. Time seemed to last forever. Nothing else could be seen between heaven and earth. Blood-red light filled the entire space. This situation lasted for more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, the blood-red light slowly dissipated. The sky returned to its original blue color. Once again, the sea was converted to the azure color. It was as if nothing had happened. However, the small island with a radius of more than 30 kilometers that those people had stopped at had disappeared. A large amount of seawater was flowing toward the place where the small island had been. And dozens of kilometers away, huge waves of 100 meters high were rapidly spreading in all directions. It was like a huge wave caused by a tsunami. In the rolling waves, countless dead fish and prawns could be seen being washed up and rolled down. This was the horror of the Dragon-Mind comet. 500 kilometers was 1,000 miles. Taking a person's head from 1,000 miles away was a child's play in front of Mo Shi. His Dragon-Mind comet could directly kill tens of thousands of people from 1,000 miles away. Compressing the huge Dragon-Mind to a critical point and then flicking it out. And Mo Shi had already left a trace of Dragon-Mind on those people. In this way, with the precise guidance of the Dragon-Mind, let alone 500 kilometers, even if they escaped 1,000 kilometers, they could still be killed. Thinking of this, Mo Shi chuckled. He picked up the teacup again and slowly took a sip. Guojutao, who was next to him, had already guessed what Mo Shi had done. He asked, Mr. Mo, they are all dead? Mo Shi did not speak. He held the teacup, blew the tea leaves on it, and nodded slightly. However, Guojutao, who was next to him, was shocked. Those people had all left on flying skateboards. According to the flying skateboard speed of 1 kilometer per second, they would have already been 500 kilometers away. Mr. Mo could actually kill more than 20,000 people from 500 kilometers away? What kind of method was this? This was the method of a god. Thinking of this, Guojutao's admiration for Mo Shi increased a little. After a moment of amazement, Guojutao said, "Mr. Mo, then I won't disturb your rest." Mo Shi nodded. Guojutao left. At this time, Mo Shi really needed to rest. Although it was just a small dragon mind sesame seed, it had consumed all of his dragon mind. With the current size of his dragon mind, it would take at least 2 or 3 months for him to fully recover. One use of the dragon mind comet would have to cool down for 2 or 3 months. It seemed that this skill had to be used carefully in the future. Mo Shi shook his head helplessly. His face was slightly pale. He took out dozens of bottles of dragon mind recovery potion from his backpack. Gulp, gulp, gulp. He felt that the feeling of weakness just now had eased a little. However, it was just a relief. With the current size of his dragon mind, it was impossible to fully recover with just a few bottles of dragon mind recovery potion. He was afraid that he would have to wait for the system to level up and see if he could reward him with an enhanced version of dragon mind recovery potion. After doing this, Mo Shi went through the memories of the 2 people that he had just plundered in his mind. He had just plundered the memories of Erden and Ding Zhicheng. In fact, from the memories of Sha Qi that he had plundered before, he knew that there was a crystal source vein under the first hunting island. It was just that mining the crystal source vein was too costly, so he had not done it. He did not expect that Ding Zhicheng also knew about the vein. He also told the Black Pack gang. It seemed that it would not be long before the people of the Black Pack gang came here. Although Mo Shi was not interested in the crystal source vein, even if his own things were to rot in his hands, he would not let others take them for free. Chapter 247. Macho had killed the son of the leader of the Black Pack gang. It wouldn't be long before the Black Pack gang found this place. As far as he knew, the leader of the Black Pack gang was a level 9 hunter. Even with his current strength, it would be difficult to deal with him. Moreover, the Black Pack gang had 2 mechas on the surface. In fact, they already had 6 combat mechas in their possession. Mo Shi was now considering how to incorporate the 6 mechas without destroying them. Thinking of this, he asked someone to find the little monk. The little monk was holding a game console with his head lowered. His hands didn't stop at all. His bald head was wrapped in a bandage with 4 crooked red words written on it. On the left was "try" and on the right was "pass." In the middle was a Buddhist symbol. The game console in his hand. It wasn't a game console from Earth, but a game console from the flaming continent. There were 2 handles on both sides. As long as the buttons were pressed, a virtual screen would pop up in the center. The little monk had accidentally found this in a dormitory. Ever since he discovered this game console, he spent almost half of his time playing games every day. Mo Shi didn't care much about him. As long as it didn't affect his work, he could play as much as he wanted. When the little monk saw Mo Shi, he chuckled. Hee hee, Amitba, good job. Boss Missouri, you were looking for me? In the entire base, almost everyone called Mo Shi Mr. Mo. Only the little monk called Mo Shi Boss Missouri. This was a huge contrast with his appearance. Mo Shi asked. After all this time, how much do you know about the computers of the flaming continent? The little monk chuckled and said, let's put it this way. As long as you can find a game on the flaming continent, I can crack it. Boss, do you want to play? The game I'm playing now directly turns on the invincible god of death mode. Kill your way through, broken limbs flying, blood splattering everywhere. It's so cool. Mo Shi was a bit speechless. That's not like a monk. The little monk chuckled and scratched his bald head. Then he put his palms together and made a sound. Amitba, that's good. Boss, do I look like one now? Mo Shi was amused and said with a smile, brat, which part of you looks like a monk? Then what do I look like? Mo Shi was too lazy to banter with him. After a while, there should be a few foreign fighter mechas attacking our base. Do you have the ability to crack their program and take those mechas? The small monk chuckled and scratched his bald head. He said, Boss, I don't dare to say too much. After all, he didn't know much about the mecha programs of the Flaming Dawn continent. However, as long as you buy me some time, I have a 50% chance of cracking their firewall. Mo sure nodded. I'll try to buy you as much time as possible. Take over those mechas without damaging them. The small monk nodded and said, Yes, boss. I swear to Buddha that I will complete the mission. Mo sure laughed. Do you think Buddha will care about you? The small monk chuckled and said, If Buddha doesn't care about me, I won't believe in Buddha anymore. Mo sure asked back, Have you ever believed in Buddha? The small monk scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. I've never believed in Buddha. But I believe in Boss. Believe in Boss and you will live forever. After sending the small monk away, Mo sure continued to check Erden's memories. As a newcomer, every time Mo sure plundered a person's memories, he would directly check all of them. From there, he would gain more knowledge. Anyway, his dragon will had now advanced to level 4. Checking the complete memories wouldn't affect him too much. After a while, Mo sure made a major discovery in Erden's memories. There was an ancient battlefield on the Flaming Dawn continent. This wasn't an ordinary ancient battlefield, but an ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Legend had it that in ancient times, 2 groups of giant dragons fought there, which eventually formed the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. When Mo sure saw this, he couldn't help but feel excited. If he went to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons and signed in there, the benefits should be much greater than the dragon ruins. There were many good things in the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Not to mention other things, just picking up a piece of dragon scale and making it into a shield would be harder than any shield in the world. Moreover, there were many powerful wild beasts in the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Therefore, it was also a good place to go for training. However, those who had been there and whose strength was below that of a desolate hunter would often die inexplicably. Even if they didn't die, some strange things would often happen to them. Therefore, the ancient battlefield was sealed by a powerful being. Of course, they didn't completely seal it off. Those who had reached the level of a desolate hunter could still break the seal and go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Therefore, many top experts who had reached the level of a desolate hunter would go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons to train if they couldn't improve for a long time. After they came back from there, their strength would often increase. Many people would increase by 2 or even 3 levels at once. After becoming a desolate hunter, the difficulty of increasing one's strength increased exponentially. Those who went to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons, no matter their aptitude, would increase by 2 or 3 levels. It could be seen that the ancient battlefield of giant dragons was definitely a treasure trove. The more Mo sure thought about it, the more excited he became. He couldn't wait to go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. However, after a while, he suppressed the excitement in his heart. It was better to increase his strength to that of a desolate hunter first. This was an extremely long process. Therefore, for the next few days, Mo sure continued to sign in at the base every day. Every day, he used 8 drops of dragon blood to transform his body. According to his estimation, it would take another 10 to 11 months before he could increase his strength again. At the same time, in addition to controlling the infected creatures to extract the pods, he would also go outside and hunt a large number of infected creatures. He had this idea: gather 100 billion evolution points as soon as possible and upgrade the system as soon as possible. After upgrading, there might be other ways to increase his strength faster. He would be able to hunt these infected creatures much faster. As long as the infected creatures were level 7 and below, he would be able to explode them into a bloody mist with a sweep of his dragon's will. Of course, his dragon's will was still in the recovery stage. Therefore, the range of his dragon's will had been greatly reduced, only about 10 kilometers in radius. But even so, Mo sure was able to hunt down these infected creatures at an extremely fast speed. A single level 1 desolate beast gave him 100,000 evolution points. In a short 10 days, his evolution points had reached more than 30 billion. He estimated that he would be able to reach 100 billion in a month. At the same time, on the continent more than 3,000 kilometers away from the first hunting island, the leader of the Black Tuo gang was burning with anxiety. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.